I remember the exact second I turned into furniture. Not when they shoved my desk beside the humming server closet to make space for a ping pong table. Not when then-you director of Vibe asked if I handled printer problems. It happened at the series. See celebration. Dom Perignon exploded like tap water. Glasses clinked. Laughs echoed. They toasted Omnir's visionary genius, while the visionary himself Gavin stood in a table, soaked in champagne, shouting about how he changed the world. I sat at the far end, a lukewarm seltzer in my hand, watching them worship a machine they couldn't even power on. People love to say startups run on dream sand caffeine. That's cute. They don't. They run on paperwork nobody reads because everyone's too busy admiring the size of their own egos reflected in glass skyscrapers. 8 years ago, before glass offices, before Patagonia vests, there was just a laptop in a basement that smelled like wet drywall and ambition. I wrote the core, the predictive commerce engine that now prints 90% of this company's revenue. Gavin brought the pizza and the hype. I brought the logic. Quick pause before I dismantle them. If you like stories where the quiet person in the back holds the nuclear launch codes, hit subscribe. Maybe drop a like. It keeps the algorithm fed and helps pay for the good scotch. I'm drinking while typing this. Now back to the crime scene. We were incorporating. Gavin was manic, signing everything, eyes locked on imaginary billions. I wasn't wired that way. I was a postdoc with trust issues and student loan debt shaped like a phony number. I didn't want equity that could vanish. I wanted control. So buried in the incorporation stack between bylaws and boilerplate non-competes, I slipped in one painfully boring page. An intellectual property lease agreement. Plain English. No drama. It said I, Natalie Vance, retained full ownership of the predictive logic source code v1.0 and all derivatives. Omnir leased it from me for $1 a year, renewable annually, terminable by the licensor me with 30 days notice if the fee wasn't paid or the lease wasn't renewed. Gavin signed it. Big flourish. Mont Blanc pen he couldn't afford. Talking about disrupting paradigms. He never read it. No one did. For 8 years I paid myself that $1 from petty cash. Filed the receipt, renewed the lease, alone. I was the ghost in the machine, keeping it alive, patching the cracks, scaling the architecture. While Gavin went on podcasts and preached synergy. Then 6 months ago, the air changed. The company outgrew its breaches, as my grandmother would say, operational maturity. The VCS called it the bro culture curdled. Chaos became toxicity. I stopped being a founder, started being a liability. I wasn't cool, didn't golf, didn't microdose at retreats in Joshua Tree. I just wanted to write code. So there I was at that Series C dinner, watching Gavin high-five the new VP of sales, a man who looked engineered in a lab dedicated to teeth whitening and unchecked confidence. And something cold clicked into place. They saw a middle-aged woman in a cardigan who helped in the early days. They didn't realize they were staring a fair landlord. And the rent was about to change. The irony was almost sweet. They celebrated the fruit, never noticing I owned the tree, the soil, and the water rights. I went back to the office late that night. Not to work. To check the file cabinet. There it was. YELL. Well, quiet. The original lease. Gavin's jagged blue signature staring back. I scanned it, copied it, locked it away. Then I went home, poured a glass of wine, and waited. I knew a storm was coming. I just didn't expect it to arrive wearing Allbirds and a plastic smile named Marcus. Enter Marcus. He was the new CTO brought in by Theboard because the company needed executive polish. Marcus was the kind off guy who used words like ID date, North Star, and scalable verbosity in casual conversation. He had an MBA from somewhere expensive, and a GitHub profile that looked like a barren wasteland. He walked into the engineering department in his first day, clapped his hands, and announced, "We're going to pivot to a microservices architecture driven by native frameworks." I literally felt membranes start behind my left eye. The current architecture was AI native. I wrote it. It was already microservices. I designed it. Guys like Marcus don't actually look at the code. They look at buzzwords. He called me into his office on Tuesday. It was one of those glass fish bowls where everyone can see out getting fired. He didn't offer me Asiat. He sat on the edge of his desk, swinging a leg, trying to look casual and authoritative at the same time. Natalie, hey, great work on the legacy stuff, he said. Legacy stuff. The Kadi was running live transactions at 50 milliseconds latency. Wasn't legacy, it was the nervous system of the company. Listen, we're bringing in a new team to handle the Omni 2.0 build. We need fresh eyes, younger energy. You know how IDIS? I wrote the core, Marcus, I said, keeping my voice flat. If you change the data ingestion pipeline, you'll break predictive models. The client historicals won't map. He waved a hand dismissively, like he was swatting away a fly. That's why we need you to transition to an advisory role. We want you to document everything. Write down the tribal knowledge. Hand over the keystone, the castle, so the new rock stars can drive. We're thinking head of legacy maintenance. It's a vital role. Head of legacy maintenance. It was corporate speak for janitor. He wanted me to write test manual for my own replacement, then sit in a corner and fix bugs while he took credit for modernizing the stack. I looked at him. I looked at his perfectly cut hair and his expensive watch that probably cost more than my first car. I thought he was demoting me. He thought was putting the old horse out to pasture. He had no idea he was talking to the owner of the pasture. You understand, I said. You want full documentation of the IP and a handover of all administrative access. Exactly. He beamed, thinking I was rolling over. Team player. Love it. Need a few weeks to organize the files. I lied. There's a lot of historical context. Take your time, he said, checking his phone. Just make sure the new guys have root access by Friday. I walked out of that office and for the first time in years, I felt alive, not happy alive. It's the feeling you get when you're playing poker and you look down to see four aces and the guy across from you just shoved his house keys into the pot. I went back to my desk and started documenting. But it wasn't writing tutorials. I was auditing. I pulled the logs for the last 8 years. I downloaded the common histories. I found every single instance where Gavin, Marcus, or the previous CTOs had claimed. My code was proprietary company technology in Imelsto investors. I built a dossier. Then I went to the legal filing cabinet again. I checked the dates. The annual lease renewal was due on October 1st. It was currently October 15th. They had missed payment. They had missed the renewal window. Technically, as of 2 weeks ago, Omnier Inc. was operating on stolen property. I didn't say a word. I just kept typing, smiling at the juniors who looked at me with pity. Oh, look at poor Natalie. She's washing out. I wasn't washing out. I was waiting for the Tedetto turn so I could drown them. The thing about incompetence is that it leaves a trail. Smart people cover their tracks. Idiots just assume no one is looking. Marcus was an idiot. While I was supposedly documenting legacy systems, I was actually deep diving into the company's sales contracts. I had a mine access to everything. Nobody had thought to revoke it yet because, again, I was just furniture. I found a folder market project Titan. Was a contract with the largest retail conglomerate in North America. We're talking a $200 million deal. The pilot program was set to launch in 3 weeks. I read the technical specs promised to the client, proprietary. Predictive behavioral modeling, real-time inventory adaptation, customized user intent algorithms. They were selling my code, not just using it. They were white labeling it and selling it as a standalone product to a third party. I checked the IP clauses in the client contract. Omnirim warranted that it had full and exclusive ownership of all underlying technology. That was Ali. A multi-million-dollar lie. If it pulled the license, Omnier wouldn't just lose the deal. They would be in breach of contract for fraud. They would. The suit into a crater in the ground. It needed to be sure. I spent the weekend running diffs comparisons between the code I wrote in my basement 8 years ago and the code currently running on the Titan servers. It was a 98% match. They hadn't even refactored the variable names. I found comments I'd written in 2015, jokes about my cat, reminders to buy milk. Still embedded in the deep logic of the neural net, they hadn't written anything. Marcus' new architecture was just a fancy appearper slapped on top of my engine. It was like putting a spoiler on a Honda Civic and selling it as a Ferrari. I called a lawyer I knew from grad school, a shark named Alina, who specialized in IP litigation. We met at a dive bar in Somerville, far away from the innovation district. I slid the folder across the sticky table. "Tell me I'm crazy," I said. "Alina, read the lease." She read the Titan contract. She read the missed renewal notice. She started laughing. It was a terrifying sound. "Natalie," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "This isn't a lawsuit. This is an execution. You own the foundation of a unicorn, and they just forgot to pay the rent." "What's play?" I asked. "Silence," she said. "Let them dig the hole deeper. Let them launch the pilot. Let them take the investor money. The more they rely on your IP, the more leverage you have. You need to officially record the assignment in your name just to be safe, but keep it quiet. When the time comes, we don't send a letter, we send a bomb." I went back to work on Monday with a spring in me step. Marcus stopped by my desk. "How's that? Documentation coming, Nat?" "We really need to sunset your access soon." "Almost done," I chirped, "just making sure every line of code is properly attributed. Wouldn't want any confusion later." "Great," he said, distracted. "By the way, can you fix the latency on the Titan server? It's lagging." I smiled. "I'd love to, Marcus, but that sounds like a job for the new architecture." He scowled and walked away. I put my headphones on and listened to a podcast about heavy metal history. The Titan server wasn't lagging because of code. It was lagging because I had throttled processing power by 5%. Just a little tug on the leash. A reminder that dog doesn't walk the master. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was existential. Wednesday afternoon, I was in the break room making a coffee. The espresso machine was broken, of course, because the office vibe manager didn't know how to descale it when Jason walked in. Jason was a junior dev, a sweet kid fresh out of MIT who still had that look of hope in his eyes. He was one of the few people who actually asked me questions about the codebase instead of just copying and pasting from Stack Overflow. "Hey, Natalie," he said, looking around nervously to make sure we were alone. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Shoot," I said, stirring powdered creamy into my sludge in the all-hands engineering meeting this morning. Marcus showed us the core prediction module. He said he wrote the base logic during a hackathon last weekend. But I saw theorem stamps and the syntax style. It looks exactly like your old commits. My blood ran cold. Then it boiled. Marcus wasn't just pushing me out.
He was plagiarizing me in real time.
He was claiming authorship of my life's work, Toa room, full of 20-year-olds who didn't know any better. He said that. I scared me voice dangerously quiet. Yeah. He said he refactored the clumsy legacy logic into a streamlined heuristic. But it looked at the code. Natalie, he just renamed the variables. He changed user velocity to customer journey speed and called it a day. Clumsy legacy logic, I repeated. That clumsy logic was currently processing $3 million off transactions an hour. I just thought. You should know, Jason said, grabbing Galaqua. It didn't sit right with me. Thanks, Jason, I said. Keep your head down. Don't say anything to him. Are you going to do something? I'm handling it. I went back to my desk. That was Stefano Nail. It wasn't enough to just get paid anymore. I wanted them humiliated. I wanted Marcus to stand in front off that whiteboard and explain why his streamlined heuristic had suddenly evaporated. I messaged Alina. They're reclaiming authorship internally. Fraud is no systemic. She replied instantly. Good. We have the investor diligence request coming up. The Series D funding round opens next week. They have taught us close all IP ownership. This was that trap. The Series D investors were Goldman Sachs-type suits who didn't care about vibes but cared very deeply about liability. They would send a questionnaire asking, does the company own 100% of the IP? If Gavin and Marcus answered yes, they were committing securist fraud. If they answered no, they lost the funding. They would answer yes. I knew they would. They were arrogant. They thought I was a nobody. They Thought the paper I signed 8 years ago was just trash. I spent the rest off week cleaning up my files. I wasn't cleaning. I was removing every single comment that explained how the code worked. I stripped the documentation. I obfuscated the variable names in my local versions. I was turning the crystal clear engine into a black box that only I had the key to unlock. If they wanted to drive the car, they better hope nothing breaks, 'cause I was about to cut brake lines. The invite for the board meeting appeared on the shared calendar, then immediately disappeared. They had hidden it. Strategic review ansaries. The finalization board only. They were going to close the funding round, secure the $50 million, and then fire Reem. That was the play. They probably had the severance package drafted already, 2 weeks' pay, and a non-disparagement agreement. I didn't wait for an invite. As a founding shareholder, even though my equity had been diluted to fractions, I had a statutory right to attend annual meetings, but this was a special session. However, my lease agreement had a clause. The licensor reserves the right to audit usage and compliance at any time upon reasonable notice. It printed the notice. I walked over to Gavin's executive assistant, Terrafegal named Brittany, who spent 90% off her day returning Gavin's Amazon packs. Brittany, please. Add me to the agenda for the Tuesday board meeting, I said, handing her a hard copy of their request. She looked pale. Oh, Natalie, I think that's executives only. Gavin was pretty specific. It's an IP compliance suited, I said using the magic words. I feel not on the agenda. A diligence fails automatically because of outstanding legal queries. That scared her. She didn't know what it meant, but it sounded expensive. She added me. Gavin stormed over to my desk 10 minutes later. He smelled like stress and expensive cologne. Natalie, what is this? We're trying to close a deal here. We don't need the engineering team cluttering up the boardroom. It's just a formality, Gavin, I said, not looking up from my monitor. You need to clarify the IP assignment status for the investors. You know how sticky these lawyers get about the founding code stuff. Better to have me there to nod and say, yes, it's all yours, so you get the check right. He paused. He was greedy and his greed made him stupid. He thought I was offering to help him lie. He thought I was finally falling in line to secure his money. Fine, he snapped. 5 minutes, you come in. You confirm the tech stack is stable and proprietary. And then you leave. No technical details. Just the broad strokes. Broad strokes. I agreed. Got it. The weekend passed in a blur. I didn't sleep. It prepared a slide deck. It was 3 slides long. Slide 1, the lease agreement, 2015. Slide 2, the missed payment, non-renewal notice, 2023. Slide 3, the Titan contract usage violation fees. Alina calculated the damages based on the unauthorized usage for the Titan pilot and the white labeling of the IP plus the statutory damages for copyright infringement. The number was bigger than the series investment. I ironed my best blazer.
He drank
a kale smoothie which tasted like long clippings, but I needed the vitamins. I felt like a gladiator walking into the Coliseum, except Miss Word was a PDF, and my shield was a thumb drive. The boardroom had a view off Charles River. The table was mahogany long enough to land a plane on. Around it sat the board of directors.
Gavin.
Marcus, 2 VC partners from Sandhill Road who were checking their mails, and a corporate attorney Namid Tefan with a PH who looked bored. When I walked in, nobody stood up. Gavin stirred vaguely to a chair and beckoned her away from the table. This is Natalie, our legacy engineer. She's just there to sign off on the IP diligence. One of the VCs, guy in a fleece vest, looked at me over his glasses. So, you built the original stack? I did, I said, remaining standing. I walked to the head of the table right next to Gavin. Great, the VC said. And we own all that, right? Standard assignment of inventions. Gavin nodded vigorously. 100% ironclad. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the air conditioning hum. That's not accurate. The room went silent. Kindorf silence. You hear right before a car crash. Excuse me? Gavin laughed nervously. Natalie, don't confuse them with technicalities. It's not a technicality, Gavin. It's a lease. It plugged my laptop into the HDMI cable. The screen flickered to life. Slide 1. Intellectual Property Lease Agreement. Lesser. Natalie Vance. Lessee. The Omnistream Inc. Status expired. What the hell is this? Marcus stood up. This is a joke. 8 years ago, I said, dressing. THEVCs, ignoring Gavin completely. I retained ownership of the algorithm. Omnier has been leasing it from me for $1 a year. It was a standard protecture-ass maneuver. Gavin signed it. I clicked to the next slide, a blown-up image of Gavin's signature. We have an assignment of inventions clause in your employment contract. Stephen the lawyer barked, finally looking awake. Date after incorporation. I corrected this lease predates my employment contract. The IP was created prior to the entity's formation. It is excluded proper to license back to the company. Check your due diligence file, Stephen. It's in there. You just didn't read it. Stephen started, frantically typing on his laptop. His face went from bored to beatered in about 6 seconds. He looked at Gavin. Did you sign this? I sign 1,000 things, Gavin sputtered. It doesn't matter, it's our code, she works for us. I worked for you, I said, but lease expired on October 1st. You failed to renew. You also failed to pay the $1 fee for the contract terms. The license has terminated. All usage of the predictive engine as of 14 days ago is unauthorized. I clicked to the final slide. Unauthorized usage project Titan. Estimated damages $150,000 per violation. You are currently deploying gun-licensed software to your largest client, I said, leaning on the table. You are selling property you do not own. If I make one phone call to the Titan legal team, this contract and this company evaporates. Gavin looked like he was having a stroke. Marcus looked like was about to cry. The VCS just looked at me with a sudden terrifying respect. What do you want? The VC in the fleece vest asked quietly. You built this company? Gavin screamed, slamming. He shined on the table. You're just a coder. You're a mechanic. You don't understand business? I understand that you're squatting in my house, I replied calmly. And I'm changing the locks. We'll sue you, Marcus squeaked. We'll bury you in legal fees with what money? I asked. The Series D isn't closed. And if these gentlemen, I nodded at the VCS, walk out that door. You can't even make payroll next week and they will walk out cause no one invests in a software company that doesn't own its software. They've crazed a hand silencing Marcus. I looked at Stephen the lawyer. Is she right? Stephen loosened his tie. He looked like a man who was visualizing us. Own malpractice insurance premiums. If the lease is valid and it looks valid and if it expired, yes, she owns Thecor IP. Without a new license, we aired it in the water. The room temperature dropped 10. VCS turned their cold reptilian eyes toward Gavin. They didn't care about his vision anymore. He was alienability. Natalie, the VC said, his voice smooth as silk. Let's all take a breath. Obviously, there has been an oversight. We value your contribution. We can fix this. A retroactive renewal, a lump sum bonus we can offer you. I didn't know. $50,000 and some stock options to sign a full assignment transfer today. I laughed. Was a genuine belly laugh. 50,000? You're raising 50 million on a valuation of 400 million and you're offering me the price of Oust Camry. What is your number? Gavin hissed. I don't want a number, I said. Andy don't want to work here anymore. I didn't want to report to Marcus. What thinks refactoring means renaming the variables. I slid a new document across table. Alina had drafted it that morning. This is a licensing agreement. Structures a new entity, Vance Logic LLC, which I own 100%. Omnier will pay a licensing fee of 15% of all gross revenue derived from the predictive engine. That includes the Titan deal, and the license is revocable if any attempt is made to reverse engineer the code. 15% of gross. Gavin's eyes bulged. That wipes out our margin. That kills profitability. Then write your own code, I said.
Have Marcus.
Do it. He's Eric Star, right? Give him a keyboard. I'll turn off my engine and he can build a new one by tomorrow morning before the Titan pilot launches. I looked at Marcus. He shrank into his chair. He couldn't code Hello World without a tutorial, let alone a predictive commerce engine. We can't rebuild it in time. Stephen whispered. Titan launches in 48 hours. Then you pay rent, I said. It took them 4 or 5 minutes to break. Gavin tried to bluster. He tried to threaten. He tried to appeal to loyalty and the family webuilt. We aren't a family, Gavin. I told him, we are a corporation and I am the supplier. The price of steel just went up. The VCS made the call. They weren't going to let the $200 million Titan deal collapse over a founder's ego. They forced Gavin to sign. The ink wasn't even dry when the restructuring began. The VCs, realizing that the current management team had effectively jeeped the entire company's existence through negligence, called for an immediate executive session. I packed up my laptop while they were still arguing. As I walked out, Marcus tried to catch my eye. He looked like a child who had lost his mother at the grocery store. I didn't acknowledge him. I walked past the glass offices, past the ping pong table, past the hang in their cot poster. I went to my desk. I didn't pack a box. I didn't take the stapler or the framed photo of my dog. I just took me hard drive. Brittany, the assistant, was crying at her desk. She could sense the bad vibes radiating from the bedroom. Is everything okay, Natalie? Everything is great, Brittany, I said. By the way, tell Gavin he's out of toner. I walked out of the building and into the Cambridge air. It was cold and smelled like exhaust and river water. It smelled like freedom. By the time I got home, my phone was blowing up. Emails from the board. They had fired Marcus effective immediately. Gross incompetence. They were keeping Gavin on as a figurehead for now, but he was being stripped of operational control. They wanted to know if I would come back as CTO. I replied with 2 words. See agreement. I wasn't coming back. I didn't need to. I was now their largest creditor. Every time they sold a subscription, every time the Titan algorithm predicted a customer wanted a pair of sneakers, a check was generated for Vance Logic LLC. They were doing few work. They were handling the sales, the marketing, the HR headaches, the culture, and I was skimming the cream off the top. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my new home office. It's quiet. Newpin plans, no espresso machines making was like dying whales. Just me and my monitors. Omni closed their Series D. They got their money. But the valuation was slashed because of the significant IP licensing liability on their books. Gavin is still the CEO on LinkedIn. Booty here he spends most of his time in twerking. Because the board won't let him touch anything important. The Titanplet was a massive success. The algorithm worked perfectly. Of course it did. I wrote it. My first quarter licensing check arrived yesterday. Was for an obscene amount of money. In order to buy a very nice house or perhaps Asmal Island, where LinkedIn is banned. I ran into Jason, the junior dev, at coffee shop last week. He told me the vibe at the office is funeral summer. They're terrified of touching the Codino. They treat the black box like a holy relic. If it bugs out, they don't try to fix it. They call my consultancy firm and I charge them $500 an hour to look at it. Marcus is apparently working at a crypto startup now. His bio says he's a visionary architect. God help them. People always say, don't burn bridges. That's bad advice. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge to show people that they were standing on idly because you let them. They thought I was the help. They thought I was the invisible woman who kept the lights on. They forgot that if you control the power grid, you can turn off the sun. He took the check to the bank. The teller asked me what I do for a living. I'm in real estate, I told her. Oh, selling houses. No, I smiled. I rent out logic to people who don't have any. I went home, poured a glass of the really expensive scotch, the kind that tastes like peat moss and victory, and sat down a code. Not from Neririm for me. I have a new idea. It's a predictive model for detecting corporate fraud. I think Gavin is going to be my first betatester. Cheers. Real power doesn't announce itself with bluster. Natalie proved that by letting her crucial Algorithm speak for itself, then calmly sliding that document across table. Holding your cards close ain't weakness, it's strategy. True value always finds its moment to shine. Appreciate you all for sticking through this one. See you in the next story.